If you feel the truth is being hidden from us, know that you are not alone. I am Detective Ozma, and my mission is to unearth the evidence behind the mysteries they want to conceal. Today, in addition to a case that doesn't begin with multiple witnesses, radar records, or a wave of sightings, it begins with a man, in a remote location, claiming to have had an encounter that left a physical mark. May 20, 1967. Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada. In a dense forested region, far from cities or crowds, a mechanic named Stefan Michalak was exploring the terrain in search of minerals alone when, according to his account, something unusual descended from the sky and landed near him. At first, it was just another isolated report. One witness. No confirmation. But what makes this case different is not just what he claimed to have seen, it's what happened after the encounter ended. Because when he returned, he was injured. These damages became the focus of an investigation that revealed fragments of evidence, but never a complete explanation. Evidence 1, the initial encounter. On the morning of May 20, 1967, Stefan Michalak reported that he was prospecting for minerals in a remote area near Falcon Lake when he noticed two glowing objects descending from the sky. According to his testimony, one of the objects landed on a flat rock surface nearby, while the other remained airborne before departing. He described the landed object as metallic, disc-shaped, and emitting light and heat. He also reported hearing mechanical sounds and, at one point, what he interpreted as human-like voices coming from inside. This is direct testimony from the only claimed eyewitness to the event. Evidence 2, the physical interaction and injuries. According to Michalak's account, when the object began to lift off, a burst of hot gas or air was expelled through a grid-like opening on its surface. He stated that this blast struck his body, ignited parts of his clothing, and caused immediate pain and disorientation. Shortly after, he reported symptoms including nausea, vomiting, headaches, and weakness. Medical evaluations later confirmed the presence of burns on his body, consistent with thermal injury. However, there was no conclusive medical evidence linking the injuries to radiation exposure. This evidence combines first-hand testimony with documented physical condition following the event. Evidence 3, the police encounter and early observations. Later that same day, Michalak approached a highway patrol officer and reported the incident. According to the officer's report, Michalak appeared distressed and described seeing two spacecraft-like objects. The officer noted physical damage to clothing and signs of injury, but also recorded that Michalak's behavior raised questions, comparing his condition to someone unwell or disoriented. Importantly, the officer stated that no smell of alcohol was detected, despite later conflicting reports about the previous night. This is a documented law enforcement account of the immediate aftermath. Evidence 4, the search for the landing site. In the days that followed, authorities conducted ground and aerial searches to locate the area described by Michalak. According to official reports, initial efforts failed. Investigators were unable to identify a site matching his description, and at one point, he was reportedly unable to guide them back to the location. Later, Michalak claimed to have rediscovered the site himself and collected physical materials, including fabric and soil samples. However, this introduced a critical limitation. The site had been altered before independent verification, complicating any direct analysis. This detail comes from official investigative records and highlights a break in the evidentiary chain. Evidence 5, the radioactivity findings. One of the most discussed aspects of the case involves radiation. According to internal communications and laboratory testing, some samples associated with the site were found to contain radioactive material. Further investigation identified a small area of localized contamination in rock and vegetation. However, technical assessments concluded that radiation levels were low and did not pose a significant public health risk. Additional analysis suggested that the radioactive material could be consistent with radium-based substances, such as luminous paint. The origin of the contamination, however, was never definitively established. This is based on documented laboratory and government assessments. Evidence 6, scientific review and evaluation. The case was later included in a broader scientific study conducted by the University of Colorado, commonly known as the Condon Report. In that review, investigators acknowledged the unusual nature of the claims, particularly the reported physical effects. However, they also pointed to inconsistencies, including difficulties verifying the location, variations in the account, and issues with the handling of evidence. The conclusion stated that, while the case was unusual, it did not provide reliable evidence of an unidentified craft or non-conventional technology. This represents an external scientific evaluation of the case. As I go through this file, two main interpretations begin to form. Hypothesis 1, the conventional interpretation. From a cautious perspective, the case can be understood as a combination of physical events and unresolved inconsistencies. Investigators identified several gaps in the timeline, including conflicting accounts about Michalak's condition before the incident, difficulties in locating the exact site, and issues with how evidence was collected and handled. Under this view, the injuries themselves are real, but their origin may not be linked to a single extraordinary event. Thermal burns, environmental exposure, or other more conventional causes could explain the physical effects, even if the exact sequence of events remains unclear. The presence of radioactive material, while documented, may also be independent from the encounter, potentially linked to known substances rather than a direct result of what was described. In this interpretation, the case is not fully explained, but it does not require an unknown technology to account for what was observed. Hypothesis 2, the unresolved interpretation. The alternative interpretation focuses on what remains consistent across the file. A detailed account of a close-range encounter. Physical injuries documented shortly after. And an investigation that, despite involving multiple agencies, did not fully resolve the origin of all observed effects. One element that stands out is the presence of localized radioactivity associated with the reported site. While later analysis suggested possible conventional sources, the origin was never definitively established within the investigation. What gives this case weight is not a single piece of evidence, but how these elements overlap. The injuries, the reported interaction, and the documented anomaly, each one can be questioned individually. But together, they form a scenario that was never fully accounted for. From this perspective, the case represents an event where something occurred, was investigated, and left behind measurable traces, without a complete explanation connecting them. Not proof of anything beyond known science, but not fully contained by it either. I'm Detective Ozma, and I'll keep gathering every fragment, every testimony, and every piece of evidence they try to erase. Many stories get buried, but never forever. And if you've been following these investigations, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps keep this work going and brings more of these cases to light. If you, or someone you know, has ever witnessed something unexplainable, leave your story in the comments. Or, if you'd rather stay anonymous, send it to the email pinned below. Who knows, maybe the next file I open will be yours.